All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for a few real people, just like you and just like me. All right, I'm going to be talking about the Eagles here. Don Felder, I did a video a few days ago, and this is the Wilder Blue. So if you like the Eagles, say pre Hotel California, although there are some tracks on here that are fairly contemporary, like Fleetwood Mac and the Eagles, say post Hotel Rumors in that time frame. But again, hard to put this into its own category, but it is really great stuff. The Wilder Blue, I've promoted it for a couple of years, and for you Eagles country rock fans, I think you guys will enjoy the Wilder Blue. So the other day I did this video about maybe Don Felder rejoining the Eagles. I think it's a low percentage possibility. But you know what? The Eagles really owe Don Felder. And here's why they owe Don Felder. Because again, Don Felder was instrumental in getting Joe Walsh sober enough where he could be back in the band. Joe Walsh has much higher name ID than Don Felder does or did. I think Felder's name ID has come up quite a bit since he left the Eagles, but certainly, you know, if you're going to look at a more household name, Joe Walsh obviously is the household name, and Don Felder, a lot of folks don't know who he is, which is kind of tragic, but it is what it is. And when hell froze over the first time in 1994, it's even in the documentary where they're like, we need to get Joe Walsh in the band again, and we need Felder because Felder can get to Joe Walsh and hopefully, you know, turn things around. And he did. And another reason that the Eagles should probably bury the hatchet, because they've been out on the road with Joe Walsh for a number of years, and Joe's a team player. You know, Joe just instinctively knew that he was in a dictatorship. He played the game, and he was able to withstand whatever Glenn and Don were up to back in the day. Now that Glenn is gone, I think the structure of the band is different. I think Joe and Tim were made equal partners to some degree, maybe not on everything. I think Don Henley is still, the king of the organization. And any decision to bring Felder back would probably be Don Henley's to make, more so than anyone else. But, you know, doing it for the fans, because this is the long goodbye tour. This is going to be a long goodbye. This isn't going to be a short goodbye. Joe Walsh is out there saying that, hey, we can't do this forever, but we're going to keep doing it. Kind of like B.B. King. We're just going to keep doing it until we can't do it anymore. You know, again, the premise is Felder did a good deed to get everybody back together again, and then 7 years later, he's out of the band because he's still upset because he's not an equal partner, or he thinks that Henley and Fry are making bad decisions, or they're just keeping everybody out of the loop as to what's going on. And you know what? There is a certain mindset that if you just play along, everything will be fine. And I think Joe Walsh and Tim Schmidt have done that really well. I can't imagine Tim Schmidt rocking the boat. And it's kind of surprising that Walsh hasn't rocked the boat, although, you know, maybe getting sober kind of cleared up his mind and he became more grateful and more thankful. I mean, he's said some really cool things over the years. I don't mind Joe Walsh at all. I think he's a good guy. He's done a lot for veterans. He's had concerts devoted to injured veterans and homeless veterans. And so I'm a big fan of that. So apparently Joe is okay in that regard. But when it comes to his relationship with somebody who was his friend, Don Felder, it's just bizarre to me that at this point, people just don't make amends and get on with the end of what was one of the greatest bands in rock history. And to have Felder there, I think makes it more special. If you're going to wrap things up, like Kiss having Ace Frehley there, Peter, Chris, and Ace Frehley, which apparently they were invited, but turned it down, according to Gene and Paul. That's just a war of narratives and, trying to stay relevant and so forth. When it comes to the Eagles, I don't think they roll that way. I think this is an organization that is driven still by very high quality sound, very high quality musicians. I think Don Henley, whether you like him or dislike him, because he is a curmudgeon, I can relate to being a curmudgeon, but Henley in a different way than yours truly, although I'm sure we could sit down and agree on a lot of things. Henley calls the shots, right? Henley, if he wanted Felder to be there, he would make that decision, and that would be it. I mean, the return of Don Felder, but it's not going to happen. Now, I think it should, because I think the Eagles owe Don Felder. I think Don Felder was a team player when things were difficult. I think Felder put up with a lot of crap that was going on in the 70s with these guys. And I'm not saying Felder wasn't joining in with all the debauchery and dysfunction that became the Eagles, especially post-Hotel California era. But I think Felder recognized that he didn't want to be a part of that anymore. He didn't want to be a political stooge for some ridiculous cause that Fry and Henley decided to get behind, in the late 70s, early 80s. I think his philosophy was, why don't we do something for, the Make-A-Wish Foundation? Why can't we just be a good charitable band, good citizens, and not, take political sides on things? But, Don Henley has had a history of that stuff, and Glenn Frey to a lesser extent, although, off and on, both of them. I think as people get older, though, they tend to change, and you would hope that these guys could, make amends, bury the hatchet, and do something decent. But I think they owe Don Felder for getting Joe Walsh back in.